Welcome back, everyone. I'm Julie Flakstad, and this is the Midlife Truth Project, a special 9-part series aimed at unraveling the myriad of transitions that women face as we approach and settle into midlife. For anyone new to this series, consider it an audio journey where all of the conversations build off each other. So if you missed any, definitely go back and listen. Okay, today's truth is called Connect the Dots. It's our last official episode, and it's an inspiring one on so many levels, thanks to our conversation partner, Sara Blakely. As most of you probably know, Sara is really an entrepreneurial titan. She founded Spanx at 27 years old with $5,000 in savings and went on to, wait for it, to become the world's youngest female self-made billionaire. And spoiler, she also holds a Guinness Book World Record. What's so interesting, though, aside from her sheer magnitude of the success, is how she learned to connect the dots from a really young age and continues to connect the dots professionally through her recent launch of Sneex. You have to check out these high heel sneakers. They're amazing. But also as a philanthropist and passionate woman's advocate, not to mention also personally as a woman, mother of 4, and wife. Together, Taz and I go deep with Sara about her own vulnerable transition into midlife, as well as really valuable insight and advice on how we can all better connect the dots as we enter this new phase of life. So let's do this. Let's talk truth.
Look, as a doctor, I am always telling my patients to look for clean skincare products, but many of the additives in topical skincare actually irritate skin. Women-S is the leading women's wellness brand, modernizing aging through education, inspiration, and clean solutions formulated to meet the needs of our changing bodies. Their skincare formulas have no parabens, phthalates, and sulfates, absolutely no estrogen, phytoestrogen, or added hormones, and they're vegan and gluten-free. Their award-winning products like Overnight Magic Nighttime Repair Cream and the Works All-Over Toning Body Cream are gentle enough for everyday use and are loved by beauty editors and consumers. Created by women for women, Women-S offers clinically and doctor-tested supplements, sexual wellness, and skincare products that help you navigate through hot flashes, changing skin, vaginal dryness, sleepless nights, and more, empowering you to live your life fully and age well. We're so excited to have you on. Sara, you and I have had these conversations before about hitting this phase of life and what we feel like and what we're going through. You're so inspirational. I feel like you don't even need an intro, but you've gone from building Spanx, making it an incredible company, to now Sneex. And I've got to share this story with you because I'm super irritated. So you sent me a pair of Sneex, which I then put out on my living room table, thinking like, I'm going to go try these on. And I wanted to parade around them and all this other stuff. We had a bunch of people over. I can't find my Sneex. Someone sneaked my Sneex. They're gone and they are nowhere in the house. So somebody really loved them and tried them on and obviously is having a good time with them somewhere. And I really could not tell you who it is and why in the world they would take them. So I guess I'm hoping someone's enjoying them. How's that? So
they are a serious hot commodity. Like we have a very long wait list. So
that's amazing. I can't wait to hear that story. I can't wait to hear.
See you next time, girlfriend.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy. But anyhow, when Julie and I set about to do the show and we were talking about, midlife and what it meant for each of us individually and the experience that, many of our friends and colleagues have had as well. And we were like, we want women to hear from each other and we want them to know, that they're not alone in this journey and that we're certainly not done. And these were very similar to the conversations that you and I have had over time. And so when we were coming up with our guest list, I'm like, we've got to have Sara on. She's incredible and inspirational. And just going from Spanx to Sneex is in itself such a great story. But you are also a mom. You've done so much. So, I couldn't be prouder or more honored to have you here with me and really sharing kind of your experience in this phase of life and what's pushing you forward and what's moving you forward. And I know Julie feels the exact same way. So I'm going to just jump into this and ask you a question. How's it going? How's midlife going? What do you think? Where have you landed? Give us your perspective on this incredible journey.
I will say, I think for a long time, I heard about midlife crisis, right? And I think that it needs to be rebranded to midlife chrysalis because it is such a time of shedding and growth and transformation. And it's also a really bumpy, hard time because a lot of times growth and transformation and letting go comes with a lot of grief and pain and all the things we know about body changes and hormone changes. I've really dealt with all of that over the last couple of years. For me, I really started to notice this feeling of I'm entering a really specific new phase when I turned 50.
That word chrysalis is so interesting, right, Julie? We had another
Chip
guest come on
Conley.
the show. Yeah, Chip Conley came on the show talking about that word as well. Why? Tell us why you picked that word. I love that.
Before she answers that, I just want to frame this because just so you know this probably, Sarah, but this is a 9-part limited series, and you are the bookend. This is the official last episode in it. And the first episode we had with Chip Conley, who is the co-founder of the Modern Elder Academy and also 7-time TED Talker, author, whatever. His big thing, he calls it, again, the chrysalis. So we couldn't have teed you up any better than to say that you just said the exact same thing.
Well, I got it from him. I read the book.
There we go.
The Modern Elder Academy. I went to his academy in Cabo. So I really think that that's a much more beautiful way to describe it. I mean, I grew up with a dad who went through a midlife crisis. I heard a lot about the midlife crisis. Growing up, I was like, what is this going to be? I'm scared. It means you leave your family and things go crazy and whatever. And so I was like, oh, it's a chrysalis. It's really just transformation. And it really is. I mean, wow. And so for me, I have a lot to say about how I feel about this chapter for sure.
We could spend the hour talking about a synopsis of your experience there because we definitely have it on our list. But that being said, this part 9, this episode number 9, we've called this midlife truth, connect the dots. And we were really intentional about having you as our conversation for this theme because, basically from everything that I've read about you and watched about you, and I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of been obsessed with you recently. And I'm so floored by how important mindset and also being in tune with your gut has been for you from such an early age. And in fact, you said in a podcast, you said that you've been a student in not what to think, but how to think. And so, again, since you were very young and learning how to manifest and to visualize, and it's such an important theme for our listeners because so many of the women that I know Taz speaks with, that I have interviewed, I think that they do struggle sometimes with how to connect the dots, right? How to carve a path forward. They're excited, right? But they don't know how to put the pieces together. So I wanted to kind of start there with you and in terms of how you became so focused on mindset and what connecting the dots means for you now.
Well, I started to your point, listening to people lecture about mindset when I was a sophomore in high school. I was at Clearwater High in Florida, and I had 2 things happen to me that were pretty traumatic. One was a friend passed away in front of me on a bike. She was hit by a car on a bike.
Oof.
And then my dad, which was really traumatic. And then my dad and mom got separated. My dad left home. And when my dad was leaving, he came into my bedroom and handed me a cassette tape series by Dr. Wayne Dyer. And it was called How to Be a No Limit Person. And I always talk about these moments in our life that are really dark and hard. There's always a hidden gift. And for me, being 16 years old, I was in so much pain that I was actually willing to listen to someone like Wayne Dyer, which I'm not sure if I wasn't in that place, I would have been open to it. And to your point, I sat there and I listened to him talk about visualizing what you want, manifesting, not caring what other people think about you, not fearing failure, all these things that I was not being taught in school. And I just started crying and thought, I have spent 15 years of my life being taught what to think, but no one has ever taught me how to think. And I just became so hungry for mindset, like how to think. How can I manage my own thoughts in a way that propels me forward instead of holds me back? And I loved it so much. I actually took the cassette tapes to my principal, Mr. Evans, and I was like, can we teach this, please? It's having a profound impact on my life. And I'm trying to trap everybody I can in my car after a party, but they don't really want to ride home with me. They're all interested in listening to Bon Jovi, and like, you can after a party and it's like, what do you really want with your life? And he laughed at me. He was kind of like, Sarah, I mean, it just wasn't the time or place to be considering that in school. But I always laugh and joke that, fast forward all those years later, I end up on the cover of Forbes, and all my friends from Clearwater High, they texted me and all they wrote was, damn, should have listened to that shit.
Love it. Love it.
So what does connecting the dots mean now for you? You talked about like shedding and Chrysalis, like whether you call it connect the dots or fill in the blanks or Chrysalis, like how has that worked for you now at this intersection of life?
For me, I feel like this time is a lot about going inward. I feel like I spent a lot of the first chapter, and I think a lot of us do spend the first chapter in proving and striving. And you come to this place where you're more in arriving and having to get acquainted with arriving and what that feels like, and to not feel so compelled to prove and to strive. And I like to talk about this time, like I think the first chapter of our life, we're very driven by ego. And then I think there becomes this, like I kept feeling this tap on my shoulder, and it was happening over a number of years. And it was spirit really wanting to get some airtime, and for ego to take a little, a back seat. Ego is really important in the first chapter. I mean, we're building and we're growing and we're proving, and then it just doesn't feel as satisfying, and that's what happened for me. I feel like I started making very big decisions based on spirit and not ego, and it was very hard for me to do. Ego was pissed.
How do you hear those? Because here's what my experience has been in working with so many people, and even myself, is that so often spirit is trying to talk to us, that other world is trying to talk to us, but we are so blocked. And sometimes we are blocked by responsibilities, by just daily stressors and aggravations, by a trauma or by sadness, or sometimes by our own personal chemistry, right? Like just things being off and just trying to get through the day. So, to tie back to what you said about high school and visualization and manifestation, like I'm so curious about what practices that you have been able to carry with you all the way through that are allowing you to hear this, because I think so often we just get into our little kind of vortexes and spin and spin and spin, and time goes by and we look up and we're like, oh crap, So, talk to us a little bit about how you're able to do that.
I identified where I hear that voice and spirit the most for me is in the car. So once I identified where it's happening, I started carving time specifically to be in the car for that. It's usually when I'm driving and the radio's on, that there's something that happens. Maybe the rote activity of me being able to drive allows me to access a certain connection or part of my brain that really lets me get downloads. I think it's really important to be alone. And as it's really hard to be alone. I mean, be super intentional about it. And I will get very clear messages when I'm alone. I will either journal or I'll write in my phone thoughts that I have in those times. And I've been having this connection with myself and this inner voice for so long that I feel like really connected to it. I feel very clear. Mm-hmm. I will tell you that once my hormones started going haywire, which happened at 50, I didn't feel as connected to the voice. And that was really hard for me, really hard.
That's something that I have seen and I talk about frequently, that like when your physical chemistry is off, you don't get the messages. You know what I mean? You see differently, you think differently, you feel differently. And sometimes amazing opportunities, pass you right by, or voices pass you right by. So it's a lot about clarity. And I think one of the biggest challenges of midlife that I get to see from the exam room perspective, and I've even watched at home, with my husband and others, is that cloud kind of comes over and it shifts you down. When we talk about that emotional scale, it almost shifts you downwards and life becomes kind of darker and not as happy. But the minute you're balanced back out, then again, it's like hope and possibility and joy. So, I mean, if anything, one of the greatest midlife challenges is a physical transformation and transition that I think we really have to grab. How did you kind of cross that bridge? How did you manage the physical transformation that was happening and the hormonal transformation that was happening?
It's been really hard. I'm in a much better place now. I didn't realize that I was having extreme hormone fluctuations. So I think that I had, eventually figured out that I had PMDD. And so
What is that?
Dr. Taz could probably talk about it, but I will say this is my understanding.
Yes, you give your explanation.
My understanding of it is there's 10% of women who go through menopause or perimenopause that have this. And instead of like estrogen declining like this and going like quietly into the night, which still wreaks havoc on all of us, some women go like this.
Yeah. Just totally drop up and down.
For 18 months to 2 years, I was getting blood drawn, but I didn't really realize. I mean, my level was nuts. I mean, I'd have I think it's FSH level of, it would be 8, and then the next blood draw would be 32, and then it'd be like 12, and then it would be 27. And I mean, someone just was looking at my blood work and they just said, I don't know how this person is functioning. And that's really what was happening to me. I was really depressed. I had a lot of severe sadness and I was really struggling.
And all of that is so real. So that's a very common perimenopause, sort of going into menopause pattern where you'll have so much fluctuation in estrogen levels and then in FSH and LH levels. And estrogen changes how we think and feel. And it does so in little ways and it does so in really big ways too. So for so many women who are losing estrogen, if we're going to talk about midlife, like that is one of the biggest challenges and truths. How are we going to handle the drop in estrogen, which ultimately changes the brain, and it does so in so many ways.
Which is why we focused, like episode 2 was around You're Not Crazy, It's Hormones, which was a big one. And I'm so happy that you are being vulnerable about it, your story, because I think people need to hear it and they need to hear it from, powerful big voices. And the reason why I think that's so important is because in that shift for me, and I've been very open in this series about my own, that intersection of when I was 46, 47, heading into my late 40s, and how difficult it was, and how that monkey brain, that kind of spinning brain, spiraled me personally down. And I know other women experience it. And as it relates to not only our relationships, right, which we can see the divorce rates go up there's a direct correlation between that and perimenopause. We see the correlation between depression. But one thing that doesn't get talked about, which so I'm very curious with you, is when we talk about our careers and we talk about our professional, status or our other passion pursuits in our life, it can also send you down a really dark path of, was I meant for more? I personally felt this dark cloud of, here I am in my life, a lot of shoulding, woulding, coulding, like, why didn't I? And I had a hard time shifting the focus to what's ahead versus lots of regret of what I may not have done. And so for you, who is an ultimate badass entrepreneur and philanthropist and advocate, I wonder if you could speak to a little bit about how you got out of that zone and was able to manifest what that next chapter was going to look like for you. Like what did you do to get out of it?
Well, let me back up for a second because I think this is important. I mean, this might be TMI, but I'm 53 and I still get my period. So I was like I'm not in menopause yet. Like I was confused. And so, but I can tell you that at 50, so between 50 and 53 now, and I'm still haven't stopped getting my period, everything went completely haywire with me, with my emotions. And I started gaining like 5 to 7 pounds every 2 to 3 weeks. I've had to buy multiple sizes of the same clothes. Like I will go on a trip and have to have 3 sizes of the same pair of pants, and sometimes even tops. And it's been embarrassing. Like my top fit me last week. And then I'm like on stage speaking to 4,000 people and my shirt is like, I'm like trying to sit like this. I was like, what is going on? And so I just kept not thinking that I should explore hormones because I wasn't in menopause yet. Like I didn't really think about this peri part that was. And so I stopped sleeping. And when you stop sleeping for me is really critical. I started getting 6 hours of sleep a night on over-the-counter, medication that helps, or like Unisom or whatever is at the drugstore that helps you sleep. And then what changed for me was when I started progesterone.
Game changer.
And I didn't even know that. And like Dr. Taz is like such a big voice in this. And like, and I wish that I had known that. I suffered much longer than I needed to. The minute I started taking progesterone, I slept. I was like, the highs and the lows of what I was feeling felt much more balanced. And I started to feel more like myself. And I cannot believe I suffered as long as I did. But you asked me a question that wasn't exactly that. And this is another thing that's happened, you guys.
It's called menopause brain.
So,
we all have it.
Feel free to repeat your question. But
I love it.
Do that for the women listening, because I don't want to minimize like how hard this has been for me. And then, and it's just, it was so hard. I mean, I basically had my closest friends and my family do an intervention for me. They saw how bad I was. And it was through their eyes that they were really able to go, wait a minute, like, Sara, this is beyond. And I also made a very huge life decision at the exact time my hormones went haywire. So for me, selling Spanx, the majority of Spanx, which I had birthed and grown and developed for 21 years of my life, I made a conscious decision to sell that, which for me was listening to the tap of spirit, right? Ego did not want me to sell it. It was like, what are you doing? But spirit just kept going like, it's time and there's something more that you're supposed to, do and let go of this. And so I couldn't tease out how much grief I was feeling from that decision versus I'm in real serious crisis chemically, like hormonally. And so I think I suffered longer than I should have because it wasn't as obvious to me. I just kept thinking, wow, this is a level of sadness that I'm experiencing from making this decision that I chose to make. But it's really difficult to let go of something you love so much. And so it was like friends and family that were finally like, Sara, we don't think this is just about you making this decision. Like something is really going on.
I'm so curious about that decision, though, Sara, and watching you over the years and knowing you and knowing how passionate you are about Spanx and everything you do. How did that decision come about? You said the tap of spirit, like that's so hard. I feel like these companies are our children, right? It's like, I know you're a mom of 4. It's probably your firstborn child basically that you're giving away. How, like, I'm just thinking about all the women who are in a transitional phase of life, and it's very interesting with careers, right? So with children and being a mother, I feel like there's a natural sort of line in the sand. The kids are getting ready for college. They go off to college. It's a very clear transition. I feel like sometimes in a career, it's not that clear. Like you're building something, you're growing something. When do you walk away? When do you bring in somebody new? Or if you're in a job or an executive of some kind, when is it time to kind of wrap things up and move on to the next? And it's interesting because even looking in our family between my husband and I'm in a massive growth phase in prep for the future, right? There's a very deliberate strategy to it because I've created something. I believe in it 100%. I believe it needs to be everywhere. And so I'm trying to prep it and clean it up a little bit for whatever's next for it, right? Whereas here's my husband. We both started our businesses at the same time. He's in the exact opposite frame of mind. He's in a shrink phase. He's like, I no longer want my energy, my time, my resources to go into some of the things that he's having to deal with, which are just a waste. There's a drain on his energy. So he has made this which I think is a bold, brave decision, because now the ego says, no, we got this. We're going to grow it. We're going to, we're going to do this, right? But he's made this very deliberate, intuitive decision of like, I don't deserve this. There's more for me. I don't need to be miserable every single day. I'm going to focus here. But that takes a lot of soul searching and inner work, and I'm just so curious about your journey first through Spanx and then into Sneex. I'm so curious about both of those.
Well, okay. So it's such a personal journey for an entrepreneur to decide when to let go of their business or control of their business. And for me, I never got outside investors. So for 21 years, I felt like I was Spanx's mother and father. I didn't really have to answer to outside. So we was so deeply connected to my soul. And, it felt like it was literally an extension of me and very associated with my identity. But I sold for this, really the main reason was because I felt like 80% of my mental share for a very long time, for 2 decades, was on Spanx. I became really curious about living some life without that dominating my mental share. So I sold to free up my mental share. And I also knew intuitively that if I didn't sell control, that wasn't going to happen, that I wouldn't ultimately achieve what I wanted to achieve. So it made the decision so much harder. Like for me to get, because I had to really basically sell my baby. I mean, but it was this knowing that I was meant to do that and make that hard decision. And, and then that gave room for Sneex and other ideas. I have so many other ideas and so many things that I want to do. And the business is so great. It was in such a great place. It has so much runway. I knew the team and the company, and I still own a big chunk of Spanx. So I feel very connected to it. But I really did it because it's like I woke up one day and I've been thinking about it, and I'm very intuitive. And everyone would always say, when I first invented Spanx, you guys, everyone the first year was like, so what's your exit strategy?
I know.
I was like, what is next?
What exit strategy? That's me.
Talking about. I mean,
Right.
I remember finally I just started saying to all the men that were asking me, I was like, I want to exit a room and look good. That's my
I love that. I love it.
And they were like, oh, okay. But, and I just sort of the same way that I used intuition and really kind of checking in on asking for signs on if I should start Spanx. I started asking for signs and really checking in on when I should let it go. I became more curious. I knew if I didn't sell it in 5 years from now, I knew what conversations I was having. I knew what meetings I'd be in. I felt like that was very predictable to me. And then I became more curious about not knowing. But not knowing is so scary, you guys. I mean, it's like a liminal stage, right? Where I call it in between the vines. Midlife is in between the vines. Selling a business is in between the vines. These transitions. And I call it that because it's like, I imagine like in the, swinging and letting go of one vine, and you're like, bend it in midair and you have not grasped the vine. And I even intentionally did not want to know. I mean, when I sold Spanx, everyone's like, what's your next thing? Where was you? And I really didn't know. I mean, I knew I'd been working on a shoe for a long time. I didn't know if I'd ever get it over the finish line or feel like it was in a place that I would want to launch it. But I just kept saying, I really want to sit in the unknown. Like, I really want to be uncomfortable and let the universe give me signs, think about it. But it is, there's 3 quotes, because I love quotes, that I always say are the best to describe what I went through after I sold Spanx and during that time. The first quote was, in order to discover new land, you must be willing to lose sight of the shore. The second one was, you can miss it and still not want it back. And the third one is, you can make the right decision and still be sad.
Oh, I love it. Those are applicable to all aspects of life, right? We can apply them to anything. That's amazing.
As someone who spent years working in the beauty industry, I'm completely drawn to all the innovation and science behind skincare products. And let's be honest, if it doesn't hydrate or brighten or firm the skin, then what's the point? That's why I'm totally obsessed with Womaness's Overnight Magic Cream. The only problem is that it should probably be called Everyday Magic Skin Cream because it's the first thing I put on in the morning and the last thing I put on at night. I'm serious, it's total perfection, the perfect amount of hydration for day and night. It's also never greasy or heavy on my skin, and my skin just feels firmer and definitely looks brighter. It's available nationwide at Ulta Beauty, also on Amazon and womaness.com. And guess what? You're going to get 20% off orders of $50 or more when you go to womaness.com/midlife and use the code midlife20. That's midlife20 at checkout. Womaness, live fully, age well. I have a question about, it probably pertains to many things, and I'm wondering how you dealt with it in the exit or the sale of Spanx, and then also on your decision-making process going forward is, how does fear play a role? I mean, I know you talk a lot about fear. I know your father was a big influence for you in learning to redefine fear. I would love for you to talk about that because I think it's really powerful for not only ourselves, but also for our children, for those of us who have children. So I wonder, how do you embrace fear today? Is it different than when you were 35 or 25? Talk to us about that.
It's not much different. I was very fearful to launch Sneex. I really had a lot of doubt and self-doubt around launching something else, putting myself out there again. But I think, the only way to deal with fear is to do it. I mean, you just no one is going through life in the absence of fear, right? I mean, I am afraid of a lot of things, but I think I made a decision early on that I was more afraid of living my life and not doing things and looking back and saying I didn't do all those things. Right? I'm more afraid of that than I am, being laughed at, being made fun of, being embarrassed. I mean, if you really think about fear and you dissect it, which I have, I think it really comes down to the fear of failure is really big. And that ends up being what other people think about you and the fear of being embarrassed. And so I've spent a lot of time really working with myself internally to not let those things really run my life. I mean, I will intentionally embarrass myself. I do it often.
We love it. Keep doing it. It's amazing. It's so good.
Then I also, in embarrassing things and failures, guess what they do? First of all, they just nudge you and let you know you're off course. But they're really great connectors with other humans. I mean, they make great stories and they give you an opportunity to deeply connect with your customers, with your friends, with your family, with your employees. So I see them as these rich nuggets.
So is that where you do a lot of extreme stuff? I always watch you and I'm like, what is she doing now? Her adrenals. But no, you do a lot of extreme stuff. Is that your attempt to get over this hump of fear, to hit that obstacle that many of us won't do or think we can't do, and to prove to yourself that you can? Where does that fit? And give some examples too. I know what you do, but not everybody listening may know.
And then I want you to layer in there, because I'm obsessed with the whole father and how what did you fail at this week? And I just think there's so much power in that. I mean, I want to start that. So sprinkle some of that in there.
So my motto that I live by in life, which is a funny story because talk about my memory. I was at a cocktail party and people were all talking and someone was going through a really hard time. And I said, well, I have this motto that gets me through life. It's helped me a lot. And the person goes, well, what is your life motto? And everyone comes in and I forgot it. I was like,
I love it.
My husband's looking at me and he's like, and I'm like, So then I just have to tell you what he did. I went away on a business trip and he had the great idea, God bless him, that he would get a neon sign custom made.
Oh my God, of course.
The walls of my living room. It's hanging in my living room when I get home. And it says, I have a motto I live by, but I forgot it.
Oh, God. Oh, no.
But I do know what the motto is. And the motto is the more you experience in life, the more you have to offer others. So I think that I find myself in this place of yes, as much as I possibly can. And so a lot of those experiences have happened from me saying yes to asking me to do things, opportunities. Like I really like to pay attention to self-definition. Like I think that anytime we hear this voice in our head go, well, that's not me. And I'm like, who are you? Who said that? Why is that not me? Where did that come from? And at what stage in my life did that become not me? And maybe that feels like that's the next thing I need to do. So I set a world record. I'm in the Guinness Book of World Record for scaling the side of a hot air balloon at 10,000
Wow.
air and having tea on top of it. But that wasn't because I set out to do that. I said yes to a
Of course you are.
Richard Branson. And I didn't read the fine print because I'm an entrepreneur, you know?
Right. Of course, we don't read the fine print. You're right.
I mean, I literally all I heard was it was his version of The Apprentice, but it was going to take place around the world. And I'm like, that's cool. Sign me up. I read his book in college. He sounds like someone I'd love to know. And I show up the first day and they handed me a helmet. And I'm like, wait, I'm an entrepreneur. Why do I need a helmet? Like, Sarah, it's like half Fear Factor. If you don't get the business challenge right, you have to set a world record with Richard. And I was like,
oh my God.
Delta, like I cried during takeoff.
But at the same time, I will say at the same time, you were very clear it's not random, right? Because you've always said, you are a big believer in the why. You're a big believer in like the 3 questions that go along with the why. And you're anchored to a certain degree by that. So how do you balance that kind of real manifesting of this is why I'm here and this is what's important to me and this is where I'm heading. I'm connecting the dots, right? And this whole like, wait, the universe has said something over here.
Yeah, I think being anchored in the why is incredibly important. Like almost before I do anything, I get very clear with the why and I need to feel like I understand the intention of why I'm doing it,
Give us an example.
Okay, so shoes, right? I'm the age I am. I have 4 kids. I'm not doing this for the money, but I became very clear that my why was women have suffered a really long time with uncomfortable shoes and heels made by men for the last several hundred years who don't wear them for the most part, that are making them, and they've never even put them on their foot. And so I was like, women deserve better. And so because I got so clear with what my why is to make women feel better and to give them better options where I feel like women have been neglected. Like in the fashion industry, there's been, a much more emphasis on how we look versus how we feel. We were even fed a tagline. Like my grandmother told my mother, who told me, beauty is pain. Like, but does it have to be? So if I get really clear that my intention is that, then I let go of what other people think. It becomes much freer. Like people can go, I love the shoe, I hate the shoe, or this or that. And I'm like, I know where my intention was. And I feel so good about my intention and what I was doing and why I did it, that all the rest of it is like external noise. If you're not clear on your why, you will become a lot more volatile in, I think, other people's opinions and all the noise that comes on around you. Like you have to be really centered. So that's an example of what I've done recently where I was really connected to a why. And if your why is bigger than yourself, like I care deeply about elevating women, balancing out the feminine and the masculine on the planet. I think we've been really out of balance for a long time and we're all suffering. And so that gives me courage that I probably wouldn't normally have, because every time I call someone I'm scared to call or cold call or knock on a door or launch a new thing that I might, be ridiculed for because it's different and innovative and it hasn't been out there before. I think of all the women that didn't get the chance to do that and still don't have the chance to do that. And then I think, how could I not do that?
You're such an example, Sarah. I'm thinking as you're talking, and Eastern culture and Eastern systems of medicine, the journey from your 20s, 30s, 40s into your 50s, and then kind of being sort of the mentor and the leader of a group of women, essentially, as you ascend, is considered an ascension, basically going through these things. So not that you're down and out or you're done or you're old, but you're kind of ascending into this really important role. I feel like you've demonstrated that. And I feel like the process of that you so clearly described, where the first leg of the journey is about ego and establishment and foundational work. And then it's about building family and building community. And then it's about how can I serve and what am I contributing, right? And as people hit that phase, I think that's what you're trying to describe. It's like that's where spirit is speaking to us. That's where intuition, hopefully, if we are all on the right track in midlife and beyond, that's where our intuition should be getting stronger and louder and clearer and really help us ground into our why. And I feel like you've done that. You've been such an example, like way out there, super loud, in the headlines of someone who's done that, who's doing it and continues to do it, So I think that's such a great midlife journey or a midlife truth, that your intuition is your superpower. Your intuition grounds you in your why, and your intuition, Julie, you and I talk a lot about connecting the dots and kind of mapping what's next, right? Like maybe that's the step, it's like being able to ground in and dial into that intuition to really help you with that next step and the step after that, and to let go of fear and then all of these things. So you really do have a chrysalis rather than a crisis. I don't know. I just think that there's so much there.
I love that thought. And for all of the women out there listening who are trying to figure out what that intentionality and, what that intuition, how to foster more of that, and also help the younger generation, like that whole idea of cross-generational wisdom of helping the next generation foster more creativity, entrepreneurship, tenacity, rigor. Give us a few kernels of wisdom, if I can ask, about how to do that.
Well, for one, I am very clear and I ask for information. So a lot of people will say, because I've been saying I talk to the universe for decades, and people will go, well, how do you do that? And I say, I ask. Like I say, I need a sign and I'd like for it to be this, and, give me clarity. And a lot of times I've been using very direct, specific requests, mostly around like, should I do this or not? But it's a really interesting thing. And then I'll say to people, they'll go, why? I don't know how to do that. I've never been able to talk to the universe. And I'm like, have you ever asked for anything? And they just stare at me like, no. I said, well, start there. Like I'll literally be in my car. And when I asked for a sign on if I should sell Spanx, because I knew it was coming and I could feel spirit was like shifting in me. And it was like, Sarah, you're in this place where you got to honor kind of all this that's happening inside of you. And it's going to require you to make a very painful, difficult decision. That's also a beautiful decision. I asked for a sign and I said to the universe, give me a sign on if I should sell Spanx and make it super specific. It cannot be a rainbow. And
what was the sign? I have to ask.
It was so intense. It was a really specific.
Oh, I'm dying. Give it.
I'm going to share it in a book one day, but
okay, fair enough.
It's so specific. There was like no way to deny it. And I asked for a sign on if I should start Spanx. I was so torn and scared and confused. And I'm like, who am I? I've never been in the fashion industry. I don't know. I've never taken a business class. I have no contacts. I'm sitting in my apartment thinking that I've come up with a better solution to undergarments than what's out there. But, and so then I asked for a sign and I got a very specific sign. But that is one thing that I'll say. And then I also mentioned, I know where it happens for me. So I think when you're daydreaming, you're co-creating with the universe, right? And it's when your mind wanders that happens. So anybody listening right now, I would say, get out your calendar and look at the next 2 weeks to 3 weeks and tell me where in your calendar you're allowing yourself to just daydream. Like, where's your mind wandering? Not where are you going over your checklist? Because a lot of people say, oh, when I run in the morning, I'm going through everything I need to do that day. I said, no. You got to get beyond that. Like, you've got to daydream, and then the downloads start coming, and you might just get like a weird thought. Like, and I absorb all of it. I'll write it down. I'll sketch it. I'll draw it. I'll put it in a journal. A lot of it might not make any sense to me at all, but I treat it as such valuable,
I love that. It's so interesting. I've observed myself, those downloads, they happen for me. I think I have to get out of my rational mind. I've noticed that's when the downloads come. So for me, they often come, this is crazy, it's when I'm taking care of patients, because I think I'm so focused on what's happening right in front of me and what the data is and all this other stuff. And all of a sudden they'll be like, oh my God, you need to do blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what? And then I'll go like write it down somewhere. Because I promise you, if I don't write it down, the minute I leave the room, it's gone. I couldn't tell you what just happened, So, and then I've also noticed anytime I'm doing anything else, whether I'm gardening, whether I'm, trying to take care of organizing in the house or whatever, it's almost like I have to be physically and mentally active. I can't do the whole, or this is not the way it happens for me, at least. It doesn't really work with the whole, like, let's sit and meditate and see what happens. That doesn't work for me as much as just using my other skills and then letting kind of everything come through. So just another way. I don't know, Julie, do you get downloads? Does it have, or Sarah and I out here in woo-woo land going, oh no.
No, I am totally in the woo-woo wave with y'all. And I think we all, I shouldn't say I don't think we all. I know for me where that place is, it is 100% unequivocally in nature. And I really try, to your point, Sarah, not to be on the pause or not to be doing the business of busy mind, checklist of what I'm doing. And I have a spot, that I go to, and it's powerful. But to your point, I think it is important to almost like to grab it and say, this is what I thought, write it down somewhere, have one. I mean, I've got a red book, I've got a blue book, I've got a purple book. I have different books for different things where I write stuff down in. And so I think it is helpful, because all of a sudden 3 months from now, you look back and you're like, oh yeah, where'd that go? So I kind of toggling back and forth on a total solo vacations.
Oh yes. You told me about those. I have not.
I really recommend it. I actually posted it maybe a year ago and sent a stranger, a woman, on a solo vacation. I just picked somebody at random on my Instagram because I was trying to normalize that women take time alone. But for many years, I would go away and take a solo vacation once a quarter, and I'd go away for 2 nights. If I was lucky, 3 nights. And I would just sit in my hotel room or go for walks. I wouldn't spend much time doing anything but thinking and daydreaming. And it was so critical for me. And then when I turned 50, guess what I asked for my 50th birthday? My husband's like, you want to go on a yacht? You want to go on a party? And I said, I love you. I really want to be alone for 7 straight days. I haven't been alone for 7 straight days.
Amazing.
I into the Palmetto Bluff I think it's in South Carolina. And I spent 7 days alone. And at days, I lit candles, I took baths, I wrote in my journal, I went for walks, I, had lots of books around me. I'll read sections of books, but I can't tell you how important that was to me. And at day 7, I was like, I'm really good and I'm really ready to go back to my life. But it was like this really special treat. But everyone was like, wait, what? You want to do what?
You want to be by yourself?
Fantastic. The other thing that I've read that you do, which I love because I'm a real visual person as well, is you said once about your husband, or I think it was about dating other guys. You said, they're not in my movie. And I love the idea that we have, and the movie can change clearly, but you have an idea, you have a real visual of what your movie looks like, and either that person's in the movie or they're not in the movie.
Right. It's just like the way that I could express it, but we know. I feel like we know. I date these guys and I'm like, yeah, they're not in my movie. And then literally almost instantly when I met Jesse, I was like, oh, he's
trouble.
You have to put that. You have to put that in the book. I mean, there are so many things. I really do believe, I'm sure people have told you this before, but in case somebody hasn't told you today, I really think that you're an incredible thought leader. We haven't talked enough about advocacy and philanthropy in this series, and hopefully, it will continue to grow. I'm curious if you could share with us just what role philanthropy plays in this second act.
Well, philanthropy's been a part of my first act too. So as soon as I started making money, I started setting aside money to give back, to empower and help and elevate women. That comes from me watching my mom and my grandmothers and their limited choices, and feeling like I wanted to help as many women as I can in my lifetime to, lift up and elevate the feminine. And I think that philanthropy has been really serious, and I'm not sure it has to be. I think what philanthropy can accomplish is serious. What it's trying to do is serious. But I always like to try to have fun and make things fun, because I think you can mobilize more people. And, I thought the same way with business. I remember sitting in my apartment and being like, I don't want to subscribe to having to act serious to be taken seriously. Like, who decided that? So with my philanthropy, I do, I share my wedding dress, and that's become super fun. Like, all these women have worn my wedding dress that, now it's become this like the wedding dress sisterhood. And so I always say to people, like, you don't have to have a, lot of money to do philanthropic, really interesting things. Like, I just decided during COVID to loan out my wedding dress, and, a lot of women who've been married have a wedding dress. So that's something that we could all do. And then I did the belly art book, like right before I delivered my child. I was so in awe of my body. I was like, oh my God, look at what my body is doing. And this is insane. And it's like a work of art. So I thought of a work of art, and I was like, my belly may never be like this again. And at 3 a.m, I decided I want to turn my belly into a watermelon, a basketball, a beach ball, and Mr. Potato Head. And I called a friend that morning. I woke up and I said, can you be at my house and paint my belly these things? So I painted my belly these objects and ran around Atlanta. Like, I went into the Kroger and bellied up to the watermelon display with my belly, and it literally looks like the rest of the watermelon. I gave it to my husband, and he said, Sarah, this is such a creative idea. You should do something around this. So then I created a whole belly art book. For over 7 years, I photographed famous women, non-famous women, gave all the proceeds to Every Mother's Counts. But then it was such a fun thing, instead of just raising money and writing a check or, talking about it in a serious way, which, helping women in fertility and in childbirth is very serious in America and needs a lot of support. The Today Show wanted to do a segment on it, and so like there's women all in the square painting their bellies and talking about it. So I always try to find a fun, lighthearted, like spiritual kind of uplifting way to go about trying to help and make change.
It's fantastic. And the red backpack, that whole
I love
you do
that story.
so
Yes.
much. It's fantastic. And we love Christy Turlington's Every Mother Counts. You're the second guest who has mentioned her. So shout out to her.
Yeah.
She's doing great work.
And the red backpack fund came from me because I started Spanx with my lucky red backpack from college. And it was with me the whole first 7 years of taking big bets and going through doors like Neiman Marcus headquarters. And so it's just become the symbol of my foundation, because it's like all you need is really right there on your back. And so every woman that I help through what I'm doing gets her own lucky red backpack from me.
Filled with cash.
You're incredible. So incredible.
Thank you so much, guys. I can't tell you how important it is for more and more research and for more and more people to be vocal about perimenopause, menopause. I mean, it dramatically has impacted my life, and I just want to be honest and help as many other people as I can. But thank you guys for what you're doing.
Oh, thank you for being on here with us. I think, other women just hearing that, it can be really, really bad, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and there are answers. And when we're charting out this midlife journey, we need to be thinking about all these different variables before we make decisions, right? Because we can be blocked if we're not really equipped with all the tools in our hands.
100%. And it's not just like that one perimenopausal, menopausal moment, it affects everything. Our changing family dynamics. It changes sex and intimacy. It changes financial security. It changes
relationships,
aging parents. It changes everything.
Yeah.
So I want to be very respectful of time. So Taz, we're moving into the third piece of this interview, which is around midlife truth. And we want to do a little bit of kind of our mini version of Pop the Question. So for anyone listening out there, Sara has a great Instagram. I love it. I took out the only mug I had with like kind of a visual here.
That's awesome.
For those watching on YouTube, it's like a hat, and it's like my letter F. My last name is Flakstad, and so it just makes me feel a little cunning. I don't know. This is my like cunning mug. So it should have a saying. But anyway, so we love Sara Blakely's Instagram. So definitely follow her. Even so many followers. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a few questions. What has surprised you about midlife that you weren't expecting?
The degree of memory struggle.
What makes you feel vulnerable at 53?
Probably, I would say the memory makes me feel vulnerable. Yeah, like brain fog and feeling like I'm having, I have to, takes me a minute to access words. I forget the question half the time I'm being asked the question. It's like,
what brings you to tears?
When I see other women make bold decisions and take risks and answer to themselves.
Love it.
What lights you up?
Making things better for women where we've been neglected. I feel like the products I've been making have been my love letter to women, just as much as I can create something new that didn't already exist for us, or improve something that makes us feel better about ourselves or gives us confidence or makes us happy. I love that. That lights me up.
What would your 68-year-old self tell you today?
You'd be like, damn, girl, you look good, right? Don't worry about the boobs sagging and all that. You look great. No, I think that she would also say you're enough.
Guilty pleasure.
French fries. For sure.
Me too.
Totally. Oh my God. Love fest on that. Okay. And then Taz, I'll let
your French fries.
I eat French fries.
I do not. I like ketchup. Good old Heinz.
You guys have to try vinegar. Oh my God.
I've never tried vinegar.
Like French fries is so good. And then I didn't even know, because I've been doing it since I dated a Canadian in my 20s, because apparently all Canadians put vinegar on their French fries. Do you guys follow Glucose Goddess? It's supposed to help. It's supposed to really help.
I've been tracking it. It didn't spike my blood sugar.
You put vinegar on your fries, it reduces the glucose spike. But anyway, it's really good. Think of vinegar and salt potato chips. It's really good.
And then Taz, I want you to ask what we always ask everybody.
What is your midlife truth?
A midlife truth for me is I'm enough, and that self-worth is so much more than what you do and what you produce. That self-worth is not just connected to producing, it's connected to being
powerful. Amazing. That. I love
so
that.
So good. Thank you for being a part of this broader midlife conversation. Whoop, whoop. All right. Can't wait for it to be in my Sneex. So
there we go.
We'll have to do a shout out for that. Oh, there she.
There we go. There. And I have to get another. I have to get on the waiting list now. That's what I have to do.
That's my problem. Wait,
it's gonna be the case of the missing Sneex.
I'm making my screen bigger. Put up your Sneex, baby. There we go. Oh yeah,
I love
it. So cute. All right, peace out. Thank you.
Bye, Sara. All right, Julie, what did you think?
We're lucky. We're really lucky to have assembled these women and then to have such an inspiring. I mean, her voice, her energy, everything about her is contagious. And I took down a bunch of different notes, but I just love, again, this continual idea that we need to let go of the proving and striving and more just in the arriving. Like, we have arrived. We have like passed this finish line. We've done so much of the hard work. We have to imagine the crowds roaring for us as we set into this new chapter. And she really represents that.
She really does. And I think, the biggest thing too, like this idea of manifestation, visualization, intuition, getting time for that, peeling away to really develop and cultivate some of those skills. Because essentially what she was saying and how her life has played out, like the movie that you write and the movie that you see sort of is what your life becomes. So if any of us, as we transition into this, into whatever's next at any phase of life, like really digging in and spending time trying to discover that, because then I think that leads you to whatever that next step is, and really leads you on a healing journey and on a journey of pure self-acceptance and love and expression of whatever it is you're supposed to do.
And to piggyback off of last week's, episode with Gabby Reese, and It's Not Too Late, I just think, again, she's very emblematic. Sarah's very emblematic of that it's not too late. And yes, one can say, with all of that success, but let's put it this way, with all of that success, she doesn't have to do anything.
Right.
But she's choosing to go out there and continue to follow her why and continue to really spend a lot of time helping other people. She's so active, and I just have such profound respect for that. She's not sailing around on some yacht.
No. What a series. It's been incredible.
I know. And I just want to add for everyone listening, I know you know this, but we have an unofficial official now last episode, in that we are going to be interviewing the founders of Womaness about, again, women supporting women, why it's so important that we listen to each other, and a little bit about their journey as women through midlife and why they started a company that was dedicated to women, wellness, and aging.
Yes.
So
we're looking forward to that for sure.
Yeah. All right, friends.
All right.
Thank you.
Care. Bye.
Thank you for introducing us.
Of course. All
right. Talk soon. Thank you for joining us today and being part of this special series. Well, we've said from the very beginning that this is a 9-part series with a beginning, middle, and end. Taz and I wanted to put a real bow on the ending. So we've snuck in a bonus episode with the co-founders of Womaness, our friends and supporters, Sally Mueller and Michelle Jacobs. Join us for this closing episode filled with reflections, takeaways, and really important perspective about how vulnerable, honest conversations like these help us feel less alone and more empowered to take charge of midlife. We'll see you then.